My name is Jerald Taylor, and I was a Marine for 30 years and just recently started working with the elections in Fairfax County, Virginia. I grew up in Nebraska eating steak, potatoes, ham, roast beef, you name it, chicken. I ate it all, any type of meat. And then I joined the Marine Corps, and during that time, I remember being on board ship, and they had what they call surf and turf, which meant steak and shrimp, or steak and lobster, I should say. There was just a lot of things I hadn't eaten before, such as lobster and shrimp and stuff growing up in Nebraska and all. But what happened when I was in Hawaii, before I went there, I got married, and my wife at the time, she started working for a vegetarian restaurant. So that was probably pretty much the beginning, but much more to it than that was knowing that it was a healthier way of living, healthier way of eating. And so being a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, it's one of the things that the church encourages that you become vegetarian because it's better for your health in general, but it goes much deeper in that. It's more of a spiritual journey, in the sense that by eating vegan or plant-based foods, you are eating what God has prescribed for the human race. And so that's the basic reason why I personally am plant-based today. After I joined the Seventh-day Adventist Church in 1988, I started doing some reading and just a little bit more investigation from what the church teaches about living a healthy lifestyle. A lot of that stems from what the Bible says about what God prescribes for our food. This is in Genesis 1:29, where it actually states what God said. And God said, "See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food." And so that was biblical reference, which states, what God prescribes. It says actually that in Proverbs, I'm going to read that to you as well. In Proverbs 30, verse 8, it says, believe it or not, it says, "Feed me with the food you prescribe for me." And that's which basically is stated in Genesis 1, verse 29. While I was stationed in the Marine Corps in Hawaii, when my wife started working at this vegetarian restaurant, and I kind of went along with her because she was working at a vegetarian restaurant, and I figured, well, I'll support her and we'll at least go vegetarian and see how it goes. And I personally didn't really have a big issue with it. I know that I stated that I grew up eating meat and all types of meat, but for me, I knew that after joining the church that it was a very healthy way of eating, and they prepared a lot of very good, tasty dishes at this vegetarian restaurant where she worked. And I, at times, might have gone in and helped them, chop up, ingredients for the different dishes that they were preparing. And a lot of it sometimes is loaves and different types made with different ingredients, vegetable ingredients. But it was very tasty, and it satisfied me for what I felt need, but I knew it was more of a deeper spiritual meaning, that it made me know that this, what I was actually eating, was what God prescribed for me as a human. And what's interesting, it also says in Genesis 1:30, it's right after what it says what man should eat, or what the human race should eat. It talks about the animals, what they should eat. It says also, "To every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life." It says, "I have given every green herb for food. And it was so. And that's what, God states there. It's interesting because in Revelation it talks about a new heavens and a new earth after, God will recreate this earth. But it talks about in Isaiah 65, verse 25, it says, the wolf and the lamb shall feed together, the lion shall eat straw like the ox. And it says that the dust shall be the serpent's food, but it also says that they shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. It's just a prophecy of things to come when God remakes this new heavens and a new earth. And it just shows that God, after he made us, he prescribed the food both for humans and animals, what they should be eating, because he knows what's the optimal health for human beings and for his creation. After going plant-based, I realized that my energy was much stronger. I had more energy, I had more endurance. It was a positive change for me. We grow up eating the things that our parents feed us, but my palate has changed to the point where I don't miss eating beef or hamburgers or steak or all these other meat dishes, because there are some very good vegan meat substitutes that that help you transition, but it's really it's something that I don't have a huge craving for anymore at all. Being plant-based, it has actually helped me, because I was in the military for 30 years, that it helped me with my joints, because I believe I didn't have the inflammation that most probably meat eaters have. It wasn't as difficult, I think, recovering wise, if I was lifting weights and had to prepare for a physical fitness test while in the service. I think I just believe that I was able to perform at just a higher level than when I was eating meat. And I believe my physical fitness test scores were proof of that, because they improved remarkably. So, well, I joined the military in 1983, and then after becoming a plant-based vegetarian in 1988, I realized that this was a healthier lifestyle and healthier eating habits for me at work, and even during physical fitness tests that the military administers every year on an annual basis, that my endurance was a little stronger. But even over time, from 10, 20, 30 years, I was able to maintain that level of physical endurance throughout the physical fitness tests, and to maintain optimal health even through my 30s, 40s, and 50s. It was just a wonderful way of life. For me, the most important reason to be plant-based would be it's much healthier. And after seeing a lot of, I've noticed that people tend to age more or quickly, or even more so when they're meat eaters. And it just seems to me that God didn't tell us what to eat just for fun. He had a reason behind it, and so by following God's diet, of plant-based diet, that He knew what was the optimal diet for man, and so it really is probably the most important thing, that it's important what we eat. It's a way of life, and it's a way that I know that I am the most healthy person that I can be by being plant-based. I think that I would encourage others to become plant-based, because there are so many people that have illnesses of diabetes, and having their feet and their limbs amputated is just the most awful thing I could even imagine. There's just so many diseases from eating meat, knowing that there are types of cancers and things within the meats, because they're mass produced and they on these animal farms, and it's just beyond cruel. There are times when I will go out with coworkers and friends, and they may question my plant-based diet and ask me questions, and I will try to answer them to the best reasons that I know why it's healthier to be plant-based. But a lot of times, they will give you some a little bit of a confused look, and plus they will also give you a little hard time at saying, how can you get any protein from eating plants? And of course they just think it's always lettuce and that's about it, lettuce and tomatoes and salad. The largest land animals, such as the rhinoceros, the elephant, the giraffe, the hippo, and even the gorilla, are the strongest animals on earth. And so they're all vegetarians, vegans, plant-based. So if they are that strong being plant-based, and it says that in Genesis 1:30 for the animals and in Genesis 1:29 for man, that this is the healthiest diet for human beings. It was difficult at times because a lot of times some people didn't provide you any options other than, of course, the salad or the vegetables. But I've learned myself that, hey, as long as I see these staples, there might be rice and beans. There's different things that they have that are still available. That you can choose instead of maybe the oxtail and the jerk chicken and what have you. But there's also, you still have vegetables that go along with that. I will tell you of an instance when I was stationed on board ship that it can become a little more difficult to be plant-based because of course, there's a certain diet and a certain menu that they're going to have every week on board, a ship or even on board a military installation. So the menu, of course, the center is going to be some type of meat. And then, of course, there's probably some, smaller vegetables here and there. But when I was on board ship, when I was a senior staff non-commissioned officer, I was in the chief's mess, and it was interesting because at one time when I was on board ship, that I had a fellow chief. She was in charge of the chief's mess, so she ordered the food for the chief's mess, and it was really a blessing because she was plant-based herself, so she ordered some type of veggie burgers, and every week they would have on the menu what they called sliders, which was nothing more than a hamburger, but they would have these sliders. And what I had noticed a lot of times is while I was there, I'd be working on the flight deck or in the well deck on board amphibious ships while in the Marine Corps, and I would come up from the well deck or even down from the flight deck, and I'd come to lunch there, and when I could get away, and I come there, and all of a sudden I realized that all the veggie burgers were gone, and the messman in the chief's mess would say, hold on, we'll get you some a veggie burger. And I asked, I said, well, what happened to them all? I thought it was only me and another chief or someone on board were the only really plant-based people on board. And they said, well, no, that's not it. They said, Master Sergeant, it's just one of those things that when people tend to have an option to eat healthy, they do, which was really interesting to me because it's just that simple. When people are given the option to eat something healthy, they tend to do so. And so to me, that kind of proved a lot of point why becoming plant-based is just encouraged and just the best thing to do for us all to maintain optimal health. When I would go home for just to visit my friends or my family, it was challenging because they weren't necessarily going to cook something especially for me. However, over time, it's interesting because at first I would maybe buy some of my own food, cook my own food, or make something my own. But after I would share some with my sisters or my brothers, I noticed that they tended to change from regular milk to almond milk or different things like that. But what's been really a blessing recently is that my sister and brother-in-law have been buying, I think it's a Gardein holiday roast every Thanksgiving for me, so I have something, you know, as a substitute than the turkey and the ham and different things that they serve. But I mean, I'm perfectly satisfied with what most people may not like, but I sure love it, and it's the green bean casserole every Thanksgiving. So it's like I said, but I'm truly blessed by having, you know, a family that, you know, kind of understand that they don't necessarily give me too hard of a time. I mean, but it's been a blessing at least to know that, hey, somebody cares, that they still love you, and they still will try their best to accommodate you if they can. Do I have any regrets about becoming plant-based? Not really, not at all, because I know that being plant-based is the best diet for, you know, for me and for all men, all mankind, all the entire human race. I just don't have any issues with it, because I find myself more satisfied than before. I would say there are times I remember eating meat, and you would not necessarily get, you know, feel sick, but maybe that is it. It's interesting because, you know, growing up, eating steak and potatoes and ham and roast beef and what have you, that I really was not a big, I guess, salad person. But I have learned over time that, you know, I actually enjoy probably a salad, you know, with some either walnuts or some almonds once in a while, just to give you a little bit more protein. But, you know, there's plenty of protein in the salad itself, especially if you chop up some broccoli and put it in there as well. It's interesting because now I find that a salad is one of my favorite foods to eat now, because you can put so many different things in it. I've a Brussels sprout, you know, with cranberry salad or something that I think Costco or somebody makes, but it's delicious. And I find that this is something I probably wouldn't have eaten in the past, but now it's one of the things that it's one of my favorite foods. I mean, we just had it was a vegan pizza with vegan cheese from Follow Your Heart, and there's just so many options out there now that they have made so many wonderful choices of vegan meats and vegan cheeses, just different substitutes. When it comes down to it, it's all about how you season your food. And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, for breakfast, you know, once in a while I will have some scrambled tofu, or I'll have some. Let's see, I've had, you know, there's some types of oatmeal or steel cut oats and stuff once in a while, but recently I've been doing a little bit of intermittent fasting is what I've been doing lately, and that tends to help. Of course, as you get older, sometimes you pan on a little weight, and the pandemic hasn't helped any. But it's just one of those things that I find to help me, you know, maintain my health. Do I think I'll ever eat meat again? I don't believe I will. I mean, there's really I don't have any desire to eat it. I mean, there are times I know I see other people eating it, of course, and go, oh yeah, I remember what that tastes like. So it's not something that, you know, that just gnaws at me or anything like that, because I know there's better choices. It's like I said, what was happening on board ship, when people are given a choice, you know, they're actually, you know, they choose the healthier option. A way to get started would be to just try some of these wonderful options that they have of different vegan cheeses, or even just different vegan, different types of meats that they have, mog meats. I mean, I've had the Impossible Burger, and it tastes exactly like meat. It's if I were to give it to somebody and they didn't know it, they would not even know it wasn't meat. So, I mean, but there are a lot of different options out there, and I would suggest people just try them, see what they think, use that in place of, you know, your regular ground beef or whatever you want, and chili and different things, and just see if you notice it. But it really comes down to how you season it. Use the same seasonings, you'll come out probably with even a better taste than you had before. I mean, I know that those foods are more of a transition But if you realize that eating whole foods, whole grain rice, legumes, beans, there are so many different, soups that you can eat. There's just different ways that you can satisfy yourself by, instead of eating this meat, and because they're just healthier options, and they have much better taste than meat, because you wouldn't eat meat if it wasn't seasoned. I guarantee you that. That's one of the things that I really probably eat more than anything, is I'd eat, pistachios and almonds and walnuts. I eat a lot of nuts, and it's funny because we, growing up on my, visiting my grandfather, we used to eat a lot of, he'd have a bowl of nuts sitting on the table, and we'd crack those up, and, themselves when they're in their pure whole form, and we would dig those nuts out, whether they're Brazil nuts or almonds or walnuts and stuff. One way to maybe transition this food is get rid of your meat and all these other foods, but buy some of these plant-based options and keep that all in your refrigerator, and then that way you won't have a choice. You'll have what's there, but you'll see when you're hungry that your palate will start changing. That's what you'll notice more and all, and you'll actually enjoy and love these foods for what they are and what God has prescribed for them. The book of Daniel, it talks about Daniel and his three friends. People may have heard it as Daniel and the three Hebrew boys or something, but their names are Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And we probably know them more commonly known. Daniel was known as Belteshazzar, and then the others were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But the real names were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. These four young boys, they were captured, of course, by King Nebuchadnezzar, and they took them from Jerusalem to Babylon. He wanted to basically assimilate them and to train them into the ways of the Babylonians. And so what he did is he offered them, the finest, choicest meats and food of the king's delicacies and his best wine and stuff. But Daniel said this in it's in chapter 1 and verse 8 of Daniel. Says, "But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank." He says, "Therefore he questioned the chief of the eunuchs that he may not defile himself." So he and his three friends decided that they requested not to eat this king's meat. Of course, the king, the chief of the eunuchs, was concerned because he didn't want to disappoint the king, King Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel asked that, he said, "Well, test us. Let us be given the food." He actually says this in verse 12 of Daniel 1. He says, "Please test your servants for 10 days and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink." He says, "Then let our countenances be examined before you, and the countenances of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies as you see fit, so deal with your servants." Anyways, he goes on to say the chief eunuchs consented, and he let them, he tested them for 10 days. But it says in verse 15 of Daniel 1, it says, "At the end of the 10 days, their countenance appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacy." It even goes on and says in verse 17, is, "As for these four young men, God gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams." But what it's telling me is by eating a diet of vegetables and fruit, your body works better and more efficient, so you're actually able to read and understand and to be more intelligent, and your mind isn't clouded with the fatty substances of that meat eating will cause. But it's just interesting because it says the king actually interviewed them, and it says, "Among them all, none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they served before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers and all who are in the realm, just proves that what the diet that God has prescribed for man and for animals, that these diets are the optimal diet for the best health that any of us can have in this world.